Amancio Ortega is a name that might not be immediately recognizable to many people, and yet, he is one of the wealthiest individuals in the world. Unlike the tech billionaires whose faces appear on magazine covers and in interviews, Ortega has built a reputation for keeping a remarkably low profile. He is the founder of Inditex, the parent company of Zara, one of the most successful fashion retailers in history. His story is a classic rags-to-riches narrative, but it carries its own unique qualities. Ortega did not stumble into fortune by accident, nor was he born into privilege. He meticulously studied the patterns of fashion, consumer behavior and supply chains, and in doing so, revolutionized an entire industry. What makes his story so compelling is not just the scale of his wealth, but the way he quietly shaped the way the world buys clothes. Amancio Ortega was born in 1936 in Bustongo de Arbas, a small village in León, Spain. His father was a railway worker and his mother was a housemaid. The family was poor, and Ortega's childhood was modest by any measure. When he was about 14, the family moved to the city of La Coruna, where his father had found work. This move would prove pivotal. La Coruna was a coastal town, and it was here that young Amancio found employment in a local shirtmaker's shop. He began as a delivery boy, carrying packages to customers, but it wasn't long before he became fascinated with the production side of the business. Ortega learned how to sew, cut cloth, and understand the mechanics of garment making. More importantly, he observed the inefficiencies of the industry, how fashion moved slowly from the designers to the shops, and how costs piled up in the process. These early experiences instilled in him the idea that the system could be streamlined. By the 1960s, Ortega had become skilled enough to start making clothing on his own. With his siblings and his first wife, Rosalía Mera, he began sewing quilted bathrobes in their living room. They founded a small company called Confecciones Goa. At first, it was a tiny operation. Ortega himself would go door to door to local shops, showing them the garments, and trying to convince them to stock his products. His business model was already hinting at the ideas that would later make him a billionaire: create affordable clothing that looked fashionable, cut out unnecessary middlemen, and deliver products quickly. This nimble, customer-focused approach was a stark contrast to the prevailing fashion industry, which operated on long cycles of seasonal collections that took months to develop and deliver. In 1975, Ortega and Mera opened the first Zara store in La Coruna. The store's name was originally supposed to be Zorba, after the movie Zorba the Greek, but because another local business already used that name, Ortega changed it to Zara. The concept was simple but disruptive. Instead of predicting fashion trends a year in advance, Zara produced clothing in small batches, adapted designs quickly, and got them into stores at lightning speed. If customers liked a design, more would be produced. If not, it would be pulled and replaced almost immediately. This approach became known as fast fashion. It meant that Zara's stores always had fresh styles, and customers had a reason to return often. The scarcity model also created a sense of urgency. If you saw a dress you liked, you couldn't wait weeks to think about it because it might be gone the next time you visited the store. The brilliance of Ortega's vision was in the supply chain. He invested heavily in technology and logistics. Zara's factories and distribution centers were designed for speed, not bulk. Traditional fashion retailers outsourced much of their production to distant factories in Asia, which meant delays of several months from design to store shelves. Ortega kept a large part of Zara's production closer to home, in Spain and nearby countries like Portugal and Morocco. This allowed Zara to design, manufacture, and distribute a new product in as little as 2 to 3 weeks. By contrast, the industry standard was 6 months. This radical acceleration of the production cycle gave Zara an enormous competitive edge. It was not just selling clothes, it was selling immediacy, responsiveness, and relevance. The strategy redefined customer expectations, and Zara grew explosively. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Zara expanded across Spain and then internationally. The company's model of fast fashion proved scalable. Stores opened in Portugal, France, and eventually the United States. Each time, the formula was the same: offer stylish clothes at accessible prices, replenish inventory constantly, and adapt quickly to what customers wanted. Unlike luxury fashion houses that dictated style from the top down, Zara flipped the model upside down. Ortega once famously said, "The customer has the final say." Instead of trying to predict trends, Zara reacted to them in real time, letting customer preferences guide production. The company's design teams watched street fashion, analyzed sales data, and listened to customer feedback to create products that matched demand almost instantly. In 1985, Ortega founded Inditex, short for Industria de Diseño Textil. Zara was its flagship brand, but Ortega expanded the portfolio to include other retail chains like Massimo Dutti, Pull & Bear, Bershka, and Stradivarius. Each targeted a different market segment, from young teenagers to professional adults. This diversification allowed Inditex to capture a broad swath of the clothing market, appealing to customers across age groups and income levels. By the 2000s, Inditex had become one of the largest fashion retailers in the world, with thousands of stores across dozens of countries. Massimo Dutti, Pull & Bear, Bershka, and Stradivarius. Despite his growing empire, Ortega himself remained deeply private. Unlike many billionaires who cultivate public personas, Ortega avoided the spotlight. For decades, almost no photographs of him existed. He rarely gave interviews, and he was known to live modestly despite his wealth. He wore simple clothing, often from Zara itself, and ate lunch at the company cafeteria with his employees. He maintained a routine of visiting Zara stores regularly, walking the aisles, and observing customer behavior firsthand. His management style was pragmatic and hands-on. He valued humility, hard work, and discretion. This quiet demeanor became part of his mystique. How could one of the richest men in the world remain almost invisible to the public eye? By the early 2000s, Amancio Ortega's fortune had reached astronomical levels. Inditex went public in 2001, making him instantly one of the richest individuals in Europe. For a time, he even topped the Forbes Billionaires list, surpassing figures like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates. Yet, Ortega seemed largely uninterested in fame or recognition. He stepped down as chairman of Inditex in 2011, handing over the reins to Pablo Isla, but he retained a significant shareholding and influence. Today, his daughter Marta Ortega Perez has taken on a leadership role within the company, continuing the family's involvement in its future direction. Ortega's wealth is staggering. His net worth has often hovered around $70 billion to $90 billion, depending on fluctuations in the stock market. Unlike tech billionaires whose fortunes are tied to speculative innovations, Ortega's empire is rooted in something tangible: clothes. Billions of people around the world own at least one item from Zara, or one of Inditex's other brands. The accessibility of his products means his influence is embedded in the wardrobes of everyday people, not just the elite. Critics of Ortega and Zara have often pointed out the downsides of fast fashion. The model, while efficient and profitable, has been linked to overconsumption, waste, and environmental impact. Producing massive amounts of clothing quickly can strain natural resources and contribute to pollution. Furthermore, despite Ortega's strategy of keeping production closer to Europe, Inditex, like many global retailers, has faced scrutiny over labor practices in its supply chain. Allegations of poor working conditions in factories have surfaced multiple times. These criticisms highlight the tension between affordability, speed, and sustainability, a challenge that continues to face the fashion industry at large. Inditex has responded by pledging greater commitments to sustainability, including reducing emissions and using more environmentally friendly materials, but the shadow of fast fashion remains. What makes Ortega's story remarkable, however, is the sheer scale of transformation he engineered in retail. Before Zara, fashion was seasonal, hierarchical, and slow. After Zara, it became democratized, fast, and constantly shifting. Customers came to expect new arrivals every few weeks, and competitors were forced to adapt or risk irrelevance. Brands from H&M to Forever 21 adopted similar strategies, though few could match the efficiency of Inditex's supply chain. Ortega essentially invented a new retail model that became the standard across the world. Beyond fashion, Ortega has also made significant investments in real estate. Through his company Ponte Gadea, he has acquired some of the most prestigious properties in cities like Madrid, London, New York, and Chicago. Madrid, London, New York, and Chicago. His portfolio includes skyscrapers, office buildings, and luxury hotels. These real estate investments provide a steady stream of income and diversify his wealth beyond retail. It's estimated that Ortega is one of the largest private real estate owners in Europe. Again, his approach is quiet but deliberate. He does not seek to brand his properties with his name, but rather views them as long-term stable assets. Despite his immense fortune, Ortega is not known for extravagant philanthropy in the same way that figures like Bill Gates are. He has donated significant amounts, particularly to healthcare causes in Spain, including funding cancer treatment centers and medical equipment. However, his giving has been relatively low profile, consistent with his overall personality. Critics have sometimes argued that he could do more given his wealth, but Ortega has never sought to follow the path of high-profile charitable foundations. He seems to prefer impact over publicity, choosing projects with tangible results rather than large-scale global initiatives. As a personality, Amancio Ortega is almost paradoxical. He is one of the richest men in the world but shuns luxury and fame. He revolutionized fashion but rarely speaks publicly about it. He has built an empire but prefers to live as if he were still the modest tailor's apprentice from La Coruna. This combination of humility and vision makes him stand out in a world where wealth and celebrity often go hand in hand. His story resonates because it is not about flamboyance or charisma. It is about discipline, insight, and execution. Ortega's impact on fashion and business will likely endure for decades. Zara and Inditex have proven resilient even as retail landscapes change. The rise of e-commerce posed a challenge, but Inditex adapted by integrating online and offline shopping seamlessly. Customers can order clothes online and pick them up in store or return them across different channels. This omni-channel strategy has helped Zara remain competitive against giants like Amazon. Furthermore, Inditex's global reach continues to expand, with thousands of stores in over 90 markets. As consumer tastes evolve, the company's nimble supply chain and customer-centric approach position it well to adapt. The question of legacy is interesting for Ortega. Unlike Steve Jobs or Elon Musk, he does not have a personal brand attached to his company's identity. Most Zara customers likely do not even know his name, yet his influence is inescapable. Every time someone walks into a Zara store and sees a new collection, every time a teenager in Asia or Europe wears a trendy outfit bought for an affordable price, Ortega's vision is manifest. His legacy is not in speeches or interviews but in the fabric, literally, of global fashion. At 89 years old, Ortega remains an enigmatic figure. He rarely appears in public, preferring a life of quiet routine. Reports suggest he enjoys horseback riding and spending time with his family. He lives in Galicia, not far from where he began his journey, a reminder that despite his vast wealth, he has never strayed far from his roots. In a way, that seems fitting. Ortega's story is one of constancy amid change, of a man who built a global empire but never lost the simplicity of his beginnings. The broader story of Ortega is not just about one man's wealth but about the democratization of style. Fashion used to be an exclusive domain with designers dictating what was in and out. Ortega gave power to the people. He made fashion accessible, fast, and responsive. While there are legitimate concerns about sustainability and overconsumption, it's undeniable that he changed the way billions of people interact with clothing. The sheer reach of his influence is staggering. As the world continues to debate the merits and costs of fast fashion, Ortega's role as its architect will always be remembered. He did not just create a company, he reshaped an industry. He proved that efficiency, humility, and relentless focus on the customer could create one of the largest fortunes in history. And he did it all without the fanfare, interviews, or celebrity that usually accompany such success. Amancio Ortega remains in many ways the invisible billionaire, a man whose legacy is worn daily by millions of people who may never even know his name.